What's going on, brother? I am excited to get back in there today and hit some chest, shoulders, and triceps. That's what's on my agenda. I took yesterday off. The day before, I did some back. My schedule's been all over the place. I'm adjusting to working out towards the afternoon, early afternoon time. I've been all over the place. I've trained literally at 10 p.m. at night. I've trained at 4 a.m. in the morning. I've trained late morning. I've trained early afternoon. I've trained at like 5 p.m. when it's like the busy time. Like I've trained probably at about every single time you could think of. And it just depends on the season of my life in which I choose to like work out at certain times and kind of what I have going on. I will tell you that a distinguishing difference that I've noticed working out later in the days throughout the years is it definitely feels better to have some food and fluids in you. Working out in the morning feels great for my mental headspace. It gets everything clear for me. It gets my dopamine spiked in the morning. And it makes me feel like the rest of my day is like I took care of myself first. I checked the box. I'm good up here. However, the pumps, the intensity, my strength certainly isn't there first thing in the morning, even if I jam a meal down my throat before I go to the gym. However, these afternoon times have been working out for me pretty well. So yeah, you just got to figure out what works for you. Everybody's schedule's different. So a lot of people say, what time of day is the best time to train? I don't know. What time's best for you? That's going to be different depending on your circumstances, depending on how much food that you've had, depending on the type of atmosphere that you like to work out in. It largely depends on the key factors that are most important to you and what your goals are. I would say if you're trying to build a significant amount of muscle, it's probably better to train with some food in you. When I'm trying to cut, I don't really care as much if I have a little less food in me when I work out, because the whole purpose is to put you in a calorie deficit anyway. Which means burning more calories than I'm taking in. Aside from that, if you were trying to build some muscle, I do recommend you at least have a couple of meals and plenty of fluids in you by the time you train. Fluids are more important than food, I think, personally. Hydration is key. That way you're not getting any joint problems. Because think about this, a muscle's like a sponge, and if it's a dry sponge, it's probably not going to move that well. When it's hydrated, it's going to move much better. Plus, your nervous system functions off of sodium. So if you don't have a lot of electrolytes and fluids in your body at the time of training, it's probably going to impair your ability to contract, squeeze a muscle, and get a good pump. So yeah, so that's where I'm at right now. Going to be hitting some chest, shoulders, triceps today. That's on the agenda. Let's see how I feel. When people ask me about volume, I'm going to talk about it a little bit in there today. People, how many workouts do you do? Or, how many sets do you do? How many reps do you do? How much weight you do? I'm going to talk about that a little bit today, but what I will say, it's very arbitrary. A lot of people like to lift like heavier weights, like lower reps. Some people like to lift like higher volume, which means they're doing more repetitions and like maybe more sets. It depends on what works best for you, but I have a big philosophy that I've been using over the years that has helped me build probably about 130 pounds of muscle. So I would say that the way that I train works best for me when it comes to a very specific philosophy surrounding the way it feels. Not just, objectively how much weight I'm doing and how many sets till mechanical failure, like all this jazz. To me, it's more of a sensation and experience. It's kind of like it doesn't matter how many times you kiss your girlfriend or wife, because there's not a certain number of times specifically that will represent your love for her, right? It's got to be a feeling you experience. If I ever give my wife like a quick little peck on the cheek, she'll say, "What the fuck is that? What are you kissing your mother? What the hell is that?" So it's more about the quality of the experience. Okay. It's less about the volume and more about the quality of the experience. So can I even feel what I'm doing? So that's going to be a large factor to consider, when training and when picking weights, when picking sets and all that jazz. But I think I'm starting to ramble too much, so I think it's time to get inside of there. I did have a few meals today. I had a shake. I had my breakfast meal, and then I had a little burrito thing, this egg burrito that I make. Plenty of fluid in me. Probably got at least close to a gallon in already. So let's go get this pump and see how this feels, and I'll meet you inside. All right, when it comes down to training anything, there's a period where your body's cold until it gets to the state where you feel like you can actually start using the muscle to its max capacity, right? Your warm-up period.
And a lot of people ask me, what do I do for a warm-up? Well, it largely depends on what muscle I'm training, right? So if I have any type of obstruction, if I have any type of like mechanical disturbance, which means if I have a bad posture and my shoulders are forward, it's going to make my chest very tight, right? I'm going to have some interference probably coming in from my shoulders, probably coming in from my biceps, probably feeling a little bit of tension in my elbows. So it's largely going to depend on what muscle group you're training. If you feel like there's too much tension in other parts of your body when you're trying to train one muscle, you probably got to spend some time loosening those areas up. I don't advocate for stretching the area that you're training before you train it. I always say if you're going to warm that muscle up, just do one set of an exercise a little bit lighter, okay? But what I do recommend is if you have like really tight biceps, right? Like if you go to stretch your arm open and you're feeling an incredible stretch coming down your bicep or even into your forearm and you're trying to train chest, I highly recommend you probably start to stretch those areas first because you're probably going to feel the entire movement of your chest inside of those muscles because it's compromising part of the range, okay? So, how many warm-up sets do you do? Largely just depends on the muscle group. Do you do any type of mobility stuff before I train? Largely depends. I mean, if there's an area of obstruction, yes. If not, no, I go right into the exercise. I just do a lighter weight load and I focus more on just trying to squeeze and engage it as much as possible before I start to add more weight to it. Even with that set there, something I like to pay attention to is I'm not trying to go till total fucking failure. You want to go towards local failure, which means if I can no longer just use my chest to move that weight, I'm probably not going to do another rep. Because the second I start compensating another part of my body, I'm no longer isolating. And if I'm no longer isolating, I'm no longer training the muscle I'm actually trying to train, right? I'm putting on other body parts just to try to move the weight, right? I'm using an external metric now. I'm not using concentration in one area. I'm not using an external metric to try to complete a rep rather than actually feel it in one part of my body. So let's go back to one of the original questions I was talking about is how many reps do you do, right? What's your rep range look like? What's the best rep range for building muscle? And I heard a great example of this answer a long time ago when I heard somebody say all of them, right? All of them. Although I would modify that a little bit, not just say all of them, I would say all of the correct ones. So when I'm trying to pick set ranges, or rep ranges rather, or both, I don't focus so heavily on trying to reach a certain number. That's, like, again, an external metric. And if I'm using external metrics, then what I'm focusing on is trying to complete something rather than trying to feel something, right? And when it comes to muscle engagement, you're focusing on feeling something, right? If I want my chest to grow, the only feedback I really have is not the amount of weight and reps I do. It's the amount of tension I can feel inside of my chest when I'm actually training it. Because if not, I'm probably not isolating it fully. Or I'm not picking a movement that's good for my body type and my frame. So I'll keep trying to do a rep until I feel like it's perfect and it's executed on my chest. And that way, when I'm reaching the failure point isn't just a completion. The failure point is no longer being able to just use my chest when I'm actually trying to squeeze that muscle, okay? If I start to compensate, that's the end of my set. That's the end of my reps. I don't try to do another one. So even when I was just doing that, you'd notice at the bottom of the range, I'm not slingshotting out of the pocket. I'm pausing and I'm trying to squeeze my chest out of the pocket. The second I slingshot weight, I'm gonna pull a lot of tension, almost catapult it from my bicep tendon, and I'm gonna take stress out of my chest completely. So focus on the feeling, not the finish. I think this is one of the biggest justifications for taking more rest days because I feel pumped as fuck right now. I did like 3 sets and I feel like I'm filling up already. And largely due to rest, allowing your body to recover from your workouts. And I think some people, they just train back to back to back to back. And not only is it extremely taxing on your nervous system, but your body's recovery cannot keep up with that intensive training. At least most people, for a couple different reasons. If you're not enhanced, that's going to be a significant element that's going to collapse the time you need to recover. Your sleep quality, your stress, your food intake, your fluids, any type of like over-the-counter supplementations that can also help with restoration. There's going to be so many different elements that you're not going to be able to recover from just due to the sheer volume of things that can affect your ability to recover. So you need to take a day off. Just let your body relax, let the nervous system decompress, take it out of that stress response, eat some more food, sleep a little bit more, and just give your body the respect that it deserves to recover from the workouts that you just put it through. So I think a lot of people have a terrible relationship with their body. They think about their body as something they need to demand something from, right? You need to control it. You need to force it to do something. I encourage you to think about your body as a partnership with yourself, right? So if you don't view your body as a partner, you're going to create a bad relationship with it, right? And therefore, you're going to work against it instead of with it. And your body is extremely powerful, right? I want you to think about how it recovers and heals itself on a regular basis. Your body does about 6 trillion things in a second. So you're not able to keep up with that much stuff, that much information. It is a wonder of nature. And if you don't utilize it to its max benefit and give it the respect it deserves, it's certainly going to work against you and go in the opposite direction. So listen, take some rest days. I only train about 4 days a week, give or take, unless I'm in contest preparation. I got to give my body that time to recover in between. So especially if it's something very taxing like during a leg day, or if I have a really intense upper body session, like with a push day, I don't want to do a pull day immediately following it. I want to give myself some time to recover because, there's a lot of synergy between different muscle groups. For instance, if I'm doing a lot of chest workouts, I'm going to get a secondary bicep activation from that. And if I go to train back even, I'm not even training biceps, I'm just doing back the next day. Back also uses a lot of secondary bicep engagement. And if they're already fatigued, and there's also some residual inflammation sitting in my body from stress from the previous workout, I'm probably not going to get the most out of it. So take some fucking rest days. That's all I'm saying. All right. Fit my big ass in this machine here. So with push day, with like chest day mainly, I only do a few different motions. So I really don't think that you need that much volume for chest. I'll do an incline press, I'll do some sort of flat press, I'll do some sort of dipping motion, and I'll do some sort of fly. And that's pretty much everything that encompasses all the planes of movement for my chest. Because think, it only moves in planes of pressing, like depression coming downwards, and also squeezing with abduction coming in. If I hit all those movements, I really don't need to do much else. So this will probably be the last and final thing that I hit for this. And then we're going to move on to doing some shoulders and triceps here. So, like I said, it doesn't need a lot. I just need to make sure the intensity's there, the connection's there. I need to make sure that I'm able to squeeze the muscle, I'm able to feel it through its whole range. How many sets and reps I do, kind of arbitrary. It's more about tension development and the time in which I have that tension on there. So. All right, so I'm gonna I'm gonna experiment around with some incline chest pressing machines. I haven't tried this one yet. It's like Mega Mass. Pretty sure it's an old ass company, but I tried some of the back machines from this brand, and they felt very good. I like the design of them. So I'm gonna hit an incline press here. You know, incline can be variable. Some people go back way too far, like a 30 degrees. Some people go way too forward, like a 60 degrees. You got to find, depending on the machine, depending if you're using free weights, what feels best to you. Now with me, since I have a big shoulder frame, I try not to go like too far up. My shoulders will engage like crazy. So I try to find a happy medium, somewhere kind of like a 45 degree. But again, it depends on the machine or if I'm using free weights. You know, free weights only function off the gravity profile, which means it's getting pulled directly down, right? So I got to be very particular with the angle that I choose for that. But with a machine, sometimes it works off like a pivot, you know, or like an angle. So this one is not going to be as tricky as doing something like a dumbbell incline. So let me show you what this looks like. Okay. A couple different handle grips. I was playing around with it and warming up with no weight, and I think it feels best to kind of put my palm where it rounds right here. Again, it's going to largely depend on your shoulder frame, what feels best to you, but you don't want to allow your posture to kind of curve in too much, because then the plane of pressing is going to heavily be prioritized in the shoulders. What I want to do is try to open up, you know, this thoracic cavity, this region right here where my chest and my abs connect, because if I don't, and I'm slouching forward, like I said, it's going to put too much stress on my shoulders. So I want to try to open this up a little bit, but I don't want to arc my back, because then it changes the plane of my press to more of like a flat bench. So I want to keep tension in my abs, but I want to make sure my chest is upright. I'm not slouching. So that way when I press into the machine, it's more of like an angle up to a squeeze. So I don't want to push just straight out. I also want to kind of push up, because to get my upper chest engaged, I actually got to push up on an angle like this way, right? Not just straight out. So let me see how this feels. Keeping my shoulder blades like fixed and stable the whole time. Abs tight. I don't want to get too much movement from my body, because I want the stretch to come from my chest. So I don't want to move my torso too much and change that leverage. Just taking it nice and easy. I never want to lose tension, so I'm not trying to pop out of the pocket or at the top. Smooth. Ooh. Ugh. Ugh. That's good. Ugh. Oh. All right, that felt pretty good. Okay, jumping over to triceps for a little bit. I'm only gonna do a few movements. I think I'm just gonna do like some sort of skull crusher exercise. And the one that I'm gonna do is actually driven on a cable, mainly because I think it feels better on my elbows. Like when I'm coming backwards like a free weight, I sometimes feel some shearing tension inside the elbow, and I think some of us can probably relate to that. You know, thinking, oh, skull crusher is great tricep exercise. Well, largely depends. Do you feel it? Where do you feel it? Do you feel it in your elbows? Do you feel it in your triceps? Where do you feel it exactly? If it gets too close to the elbow joint, it's probably not going to be the best thing for tricep development, because that's getting more towards the sheath, the connective tissue. So what I like to focus on is like some high return exercises. So if I'm going to do any type of skull crusher motion where I'm going to get like an extension like towards my forehead, I'm going to set it up on a bench just like this. And what that's going to allow me to do is have more of an angular tension on it, rather than, again, using gravity as my profile and heading straight down to the ground. Because that vertical like resistance is going to shear the elbow joint, and it causes a little bit of discomfort. So I don't want to have to worry about discomfort. I want to maximize on the squeeze and stretch of the muscle I'm trying to train. So I'll try to change the angle of it so I can feel it better. Ah. Oh. Oh.
All right, that wraps us up, friends. I did a couple of things there towards the end. I hit one more tricep exercise that was more of like a cross body extension. And the reason why I did that is, I think about the tricep from three different perspectives, right? You have some sort of like extension coming from the body this way, you have an extension coming from the body downward this way, and you also have reaching behind your head and stretching all the way backwards. So I try to think about three planes of movement, think of more of like a press, an extension, and then like an overhead stretch. And typically I could get those in probably two movements, like the skull crusher encompassed a lot of it. And then that last little extension kind of coming across the body, help kind of target more of the outside of the tricep there. So, pick movements that feel good to you. However, today was not strictly like a tricep day or an arm day. I hit arms roughly twice a week. Sometimes I'll fully isolate them. Sometimes I'll just tie them in as like a secondary exercise with some of my main muscle groups. But it really just depends how your training split maps out. Like I was mentioning, that your training frequency, your rate of recovery. You got to make these decisions based on your circumstances and the things that you have going on in your life. But typically I have people train about 4 days a week. I don't think unless you're stepping on stage that it really warrants you to like train more than that. So yeah, just 4 days a week. So I hit my arms, finished up with the triceps, and then I just did one shoulder exercise, and that was some lateral raises. I do dumbbell laterals. The thing to keep in mind when you're doing dumbbell lateral raises is you're always leveraging from your elbows. You have to keep a stiff forearm. If your forearm starts to give too much flexibility, like if your wrists start to move around, or if you try to pull from your hands, if you're pulling from the hands, then you're actually going to get more engagement inside the traps and less engagement inside of the shoulders where you want them. Okay, so I think about my shoulders are connected to my arm bone, my humerus, so I'm trying to leverage from my elbow. My my forearm and my hand are just an extension of the weight, the dumbbell. So I'm trying to pull using my elbows. That way I don't get excessive trap engagement in there and start feeling some tension in the back of my neck. So yeah, that's what I finished up with there. Overall, pretty good lift. That ran me close to, let's say, 2 hours. Yeah, about 2 hours. So yeah, that's that. Finished up there. Now it is time to have my shake. Again, my post-workout shake has not changed probably in a very long time. I usually do about 40-ish grams of whey protein, specifically isolate. When I have regular whey, it kind of upsets my stomach. So I like to just have the isolate, which essentially means they remove just the protein inside of there, and they eliminate the excess fats and sugars that come naturally with the whey itself. So they just kind of try to isolate, rather, the protein in it. So I have about 40-ish grams worth of whey isolate protein. I have 100 grams of organic oats. And when you get oats, I like to get the rolled ones that are steel cut. I don't like the ones that are old fashioned because they get way too thick and it feels like you're chewing on a piece of bark. Like, I like some chew to it, but I don't want to have to be choking it down. You know, I want to still be able to, you know, get this down fairly quickly. So organic rolled oats, steel cut. And I get the quick oats option. They kind of cut them down into smaller pieces so the water can absorb in it easier. And then I do 30 grams of raisins. So anywhere from 25 to 30 grams of raisins. And that's it. You know, I'll have that shake. I'll go home. I'm actually going to probably have another Ezekiel muffin when I get home, which will add a little bit of protein, about like 6-ish grams. But what I'm usually using that for is just the excess carb source. It gives me about 40 grams of carbs with that too as well, just to get a little bit extra in before my last meal. So that's going to be it. That wraps it up. You know, overall, a lot of talk about, you know, rep schemes, training philosophy today, engagement tips, another chest, shoulder, and tricep day for you. So that's going to be it. The next thing I'm going to be training is going to be legs, which I'm excited for. Can't wait to get to that. I feel like I have not been giving my legs the love that they deserve because I've been trying to take a break from them. They grow extremely quick in comparison to my other body parts. So I've been really trying to focus on upper body development for my next push here. So I'm excited to get back to training some legs. So that'll be on the next one. So that's that. That's all I got for you. See you on the next one.